Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something totally fascinating. We are looking at a highly detailed blueprint for building a brand new startup nation, specifically an independent Alberta. The source material we're unpacking today is a massive 40-plus page document titled The Value of Freedom. It literally outlines exactly how this hypothetical separation from Canada would work on paper, covering everything from taxation all the way to border control. Okay, let's dive into this. The big core question this document attempts to answer is this: what is the tangible, mathematical, and logistical value of independence for Albertans? We're strictly looking at the numbers and the proposed policies the authors have laid out here. We just want to see exactly how this theoretical startup nation would function without taking any political sides. So, here is our roadmap for unpacking this dense document today. 1. The financial blueprint. 2. Replacing federal services. 3. Environment and Indigenous sovereignty. 4. Immigration and the border. And finally, 5. Currency and the economy.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the financial blueprint, or basically checking the bank account.
Historically, Alberta pays an estimated $68 to $75 billion annually in federal taxes, but they only receive about $22 to $26 billion back in federal transfers. That is a massive $44 to $47 billion net over contribution. And the foundational argument of this entire document is that by keeping that money in-house, this new nation would instantly have the wealth to fund itself. So where does all that cash actually come from? Well, personal and corporate income taxes form the absolute bulk of this revenue. The document clearly states that retaining the specific pool of money, wealth that previously went straight to Ottawa, is the core financial engine. That engine is what would power this proposed plan and cover the massive costs of sovereignty. Which brings us nicely to Section 2, replacing federal services, setting up the startup. Now, what's really interesting about this is that keeping all that tax money means you're now footing the bill for everything Ottawa usually handles. The authors estimate you'd need between $2.8 and $5.7 billion in initial capital just to get the basics rolling. We're talking about building a new Alberta military from scratch, establishing international embassies, setting up border customs facilities, and totally replacing the RCMP with a localized provincial police force. It is a massive logistical undertaking, for sure. And then there is this absolutely staggering number, $167 billion. The authors use this as their conservative estimate for the assets that would need to be transferred over from the Canada Pension Plan to a newly established Alberta Pension Plan. By investing this base, they project they could generate the massive annual revenue required to fund the retirement of the new nation's citizens, entirely in-house. Moving right along to Section 3, Environment and Indigenous Sovereignty, Defining the Land. The document takes a very specific, unique view of the environment. They frame the millions of hectares of grasslands, foothills, and mountain forests not just as beautiful scenery, but as a vast natural resource. The plan actually proposes using this massive amount of non-cultivated land for a highly localized environmental strategy, which explicitly frees the region from any external, federal, or international climate agendas. To maintain the health of all those ecosystems, they outline a distinct three-pronged carbon strategy. This includes implementing rotational grazing on the grasslands, massive reforestation efforts in the foothills, and aggressive fire management out in the mountain forests. And the math on this is pretty wild. According to the document's calculations, this localized management strategy would have the mathematical equivalent of sequestering 37.2 to 122.1 megatons of CO2 equivalent every single year. The authors argue this proves an independent Alberta could handle environmental sustainability entirely on its own terms, just by utilizing its own geography. Now, on the topic of Indigenous sovereignty, the document neutrally puts forward a truly radical proposal. They suggest completely replacing the Federal Indian Act with constitutionalized property rights. This would explicitly enshrine current reserve lands as inalienably belonging to First Nations and Métis peoples. And it gets deeper. This includes granting them 100% resource revenue retention and full self-governing sovereignty.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, immigration and the border, establishing the culture.
This plan approaches human capital very much like a strict corporate hiring policy for a new country. So the crucial point is, they outline an adapted 2005-style point system to select citizens. It heavily favors verifiable education, English language proficiency, and Red Seal trades.
Notably, it also grants massive preference points to existing Canadian citizens who wish to move to the new nation, provided they have a totally clean background. And when it comes to criminal records, the stance here is incredibly strict. The document proposes a zero-tolerance policy, mandating the absolute automatic deportation of any work permit or permanent residency holder who receives a criminal conviction involving jail time. The authors emphasize this as a completely non-negotiable stance for their border security. Which brings us to the climax of the blueprint, Section 5, Currency and the Economy, the ultimate ROI. Let's talk about what all of this structural change actually means for the everyday citizen's wallet. The document outlines a high-case financial scenario. If this new nation successfully retains all previous federal revenue, the authors project that your average tax burden could drop from $38,000 down to just $20,000. They claimed this is achieved by completely removing the GST, as well as federal and provincial income taxes.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer ambition of the whole plan, a brand new currency. To cement economic independence, the document proposes the Alberta dollar, or ABD. To ensure economic resilience and really embrace decentralized finance, this currency would be uniquely backed by a tripartite reserve. We're talking gold, Bitcoin, and oil.
Now, you might be wondering, where does all that oil backing come from? Well, under a completely deregulated, independent framework, the authors project oil production could literally skyrocket to 9.5 million barrels per day by the year 2045. This massive, booming resource engine is what the document claims will ultimately fund the low-tax, high-revenue reality of this new nation. So this brings us to the ultimate question laid out by this explainer. Looking at this highly detailed fiscal blueprint, could a startup nation built on oil, Bitcoin, and massive deregulation actually thrive in the 21st century? Or, when you factor in the sheer logistics of replacing an entire federal government, is the cost of freedom simply too high to calculate? It's a genuinely fascinating thought experiment, and I highly encourage you to go explore the source material further to decide for yourself.